You know that old saying, it's not how you start, it's how you finish? Well, today we're talking about a guy who is the absolute embodiment of that. I'm talking about Lord Cornwallis. And his story is this incredible mix of, well, total failure and massive success.
All right, so let's get right into the big question, the one we're really going to dig into today. How on earth does a general famous for one of the most embarrassing surrenders in British history end up being the guy who builds an empire? I mean, seriously, from total humiliation to architect of British India. That is some turnaround. Let's break it down.
So here he is. This is the man himself, Lord Cornwallis. And you gotta understand, that title he held, Governor General of Bengal, that wasn't just some fancy name. It was one of the most powerful jobs in the entire British Empire. We're talking 1786 to 1793. He wasn't just stamping papers or checking on shipments. No, he was literally building the foundations of the British Raj. This was a job that would completely change the future of India.
But wait, before we get to his big comeback in India, we've got to look at where he came from. You see, to get why he even got a second chance, you need to understand his connections back in Britain. This guy wasn't just some random general. He was a very influential man.
Think of this as his get-out-of-jail-free card. Cornwallis was born into the absolute top crust of British society. We're talking about an influential, aristocratic family with friends in all the right places. I mean, he was tight with the Prime Minister. And it wasn't just his family name. He had a reputation for being a straight shooter, a man of integrity. So when they needed someone loyal and steady for a tough job, guess who they called?
And that reputation? Well, it was about to get put to the ultimate test. So let's hop across the Atlantic for a minute, to a moment that for anyone else would have been a career ender. No question about it.
So flashback to the American War of Independence. Cornwallis has one of the biggest jobs you can get. He's the commander of the British forces. His one job? Crush the rebellion and keep the American colonies under British control. I mean, the stakes were absolutely massive.
Okay, look at this timeline. It just shows how wild his career path was. In 1781, boom, catastrophic defeat. He surrenders at Yorktown, which pretty much ends the American War for the British. But then, check this out, just 5 years later, 5! He's not just back in the game, he's given one of the most powerful jobs in the empire. It's an insane comeback story.
And this is the key, right here. For pretty much anyone else, Yorktown would have been it. Career over, disgrace. But Cornwallis? Nope. His reputation was fine. And it wasn't just because he was an aristocrat. At a time when the East India Company was riddled with corruption, he was seen as the one guy you could trust, the guy who wouldn't be on the take. He was reliable. Politically, he was basically untouchable.
So, that sets the stage perfectly for Act 2 of his career. Let's head over to India, where he gets his shot at redemption and a chance to build a whole new legacy.
The year is 1786. This is the turning point. Cornwallis lands in Bengal with a to-do list. Job 1, clean up the East India Company, which was famously corrupt. Job 2, expand British power and put down any local rivals who got in the way. This was it. This was his chance to make things right.
And yeah, that securing British interests part, that meant he was heading for a major collision. This wasn't going to be a walk in the park. He was about to go head-to-head with one of the most powerful and brilliant rulers in southern India, the one and only Tipu Sultan.
So you've got these two titans on a collision course. In one corner, you have Cornwallis, sent there to cement British power. And in the other, Tipu Sultan, the tiger of Mysore. This guy was a military genius, an innovator, and he was absolutely determined to stop the British from taking over. You just know a fight is coming.
And that fight has a name, the Third Anglo-Mysore War. For 3 long years, from 1789 to 1792, these two sides battled it out. And really, the entire future of southern India was hanging in the balance.
Okay, so now we get to the end game. This wasn't just some minor skirmish. The outcome of this war was going to completely change the map, shifting the entire balance of power and cementing the dominance of a new empire. And the result? It was crystal clear. A huge, decisive victory for the British, with Lord Cornwallis leading the charge himself. And he didn't just do it with brute force. He was smart. He used the company's deep pockets and made alliances with other local rulers who didn't like Tipu. For Cornwallis personally, this was everything. This was the victory that finally wiped the slate clean after America.
So let's walk through how this happened. First, Cornwallis wins the war. That forces Tipu Sultan to sign the Treaty of Seringapatam. And this treaty was just brutal for Tipu.
He lost half his land and a ton of money. Basically, his power base was destroyed. And with his main competitor out of the picture, the road was clear for the British to completely take over.
This chart really says it all, doesn't it? Look at Tipu Sultan's power before 1792. It's high. After 1792, it plummets. And then look at the British. Their power in the region just skyrockets. It's a total flip. They went from being one of several players to the undisputed top dog in the South.
And so, the story comes full circle. That embarrassing surrender at Yorktown, it's basically a footnote now, completely eclipsed by his massive victory at Seringapatta Dam. The guy who lost America ended up building an empire in India. So what's the big takeaway from all this? Well, for one thing, it really shows that back in the 18th century, your connections could be just as important as your skills on the battlefield. Cornwallis' story is proof that a total disaster doesn't have to be the end of the road, not when you have friends in high places and an empire that's hungry for guys who can get the job done.
And that leaves us with one last question to chew on. Was Cornwallis really a strategic genius who single-handedly turned things around? Or was he kind of just the right guy in the right place at the right time? I mean, he was leading the forces of a global superpower on the rise. Was its expansion basically inevitable anyway? Definitely something to think about.